Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to SGPP webinar. I'm Oni Jemhari from the School of Government and Public Policy, Indonesia. Before we start the webinar, I'm going to read the host rule for our today webinar. For the panelists as well as for the attendees, first, do not click share screen in any circumstances. You will be removed from the virtual meeting room if you do so. To reduce network usage and prevent unnecessary interruption, we recommend to leave your video and microphone off until you are given a chance to ask questions. To ask a question during the question and answer segment, please use the question and answer or raise hand feature. Priorities will be given to SGPP Indonesia students, one student for every 3 public questioners. Please keep your question concise and quick. Please be considerate of other participants. Thank you. For YouTube live viewers, feel free to submit your question through the chat sections on our YouTube live stream. Questions that are most relevant to the topic will be prioritized. Thank you. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Once again, thank you very much for joining our webinar today. And today we have 3 guests from Innate Motion. Before we start our presentations, I'm going to read their CV. First, I'm going to read Rachel Go. Yeah, hello Rachel, how are you?
Very fine, thank you.
Yes, how's Singapore today?
Sunny, thankfully, after a lot of rain. So we're feeling good today.
Very good. Okay, I just want to read your CV. Rachel, raised by a grandmother of very few words, Rachel learned to navigate her childhood by using empathy to figure out what grandma was thinking, or just have an imaginary conversation with her. She realized quickly that by putting herself in somebody else's shoes, the world became clearer and a lot of less lonely. After a failed attempt to elope with a Scottish boy at 19, she returned home with a ridiculous Glaswegian accent, which fortunately landed her a first job as a junior copywriter at Leo Burnett. Over a decade and a half, her career path has bended through BBH, Monsoon, YNR, and took her around the world. A firm believer that love is in the detours, she has reinvented herself as a Aurelia poet, an artist, screenwriter, and mother of 2 along the way. Thank you, Rachel, for joining us for our webinar today. The second speaker is the Aurelia Petrov. Good afternoon, Aurelia.
Hello, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you very much. And how is Moldova?
It's sunny.
It's sunny.
It's warm, tiny. Yeah, I think everyone is in this beauty of the summer mode at the moment.
Very nice. Yeah. Thank you for joining our webinar today.
Thank
So
you
Aurelia believes every person is a source of inspiration. She is interested in discovering their uniqueness and creating bridges between people and places. Born in Moldova, she has engaged in social projects in an early age, serving the youth sector for more than 8 years. After graduating with a bachelor degree in finance and working for the Central Bank of Moldova, she moved to Belgium for a master in economics and business at the leading University College of Europe. Attracted by the international spirit of Brussels, she stayed working at the European Commission As a consultant for the Research and Innovation Grants Program, Aurelia speaks 7 languages. She is fond of creativity in all forms and counts painting and playing piano as some of her passion. What she cares most about is contributing to the global struggle for a better world. Constantly enthusiastic and curious by nature, Aurelia is inspired by the appreciation of human values and by the opportunity to help brands bring out their best and be closer to the people and their needs. Thank you, Aurelia. And the last one, I'm going to read Priscilla, or I call her Sheila. How are you, Sheila?
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Yes, thank you very much for, arranging the program. So we have been working together with Innate Motion for almost 3 years, and Sheila is a regular guest lecturer at our program. How is Bali, by the way? You are in Bali now.
Yeah, Bali is always, sunny. And today, I don't know, unfortunately, it's a bit cloudy as opposed to, the regular sunny Bali. So, but it's still nice.
Thank you very
Oni.
much. Yeah, thank you. Sheila was born to an Indonesian family with mixed religious and cultural backgrounds, which instilled in her a great curiosity to find out more about the world. At the age of 15, she decided to study away from home. Believing in the power of hard work and going to the extra miles, Sheila advanced quickly in her market research career at Akon Jakarta office. Striving for more solid regional exposure, she moved to Singapore and joined Cadence, a business-to-business research company. In 2007, she joined Innate Motion to run projects across Asia. For her, learning about human beings is the most interesting and challenging, never-ending thing. Thank you very much, Sheila, and time is yours. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for the introduction, Oni. Very kind. And of course, the opportunity that we can together we can speak in this forum, in this webinar. Actually, before I think Rachel, so we are colleagues. So Rachel and Aurelia and I are working together in a company called Innate Motion. So I will introduce a little bit about what Innate Motion does. So we believe that we bring more human logic to businesses that tend to apply too much business logic to humans. So what does it mean? We always understand people first in the strategic of brand and businesses that we do. And you will get to know, of course, the content of our talk today. But to give you a bit of a flavor why we focus on this, because not only in government and in politics and in leadership that stronger feminine values have been able to shape a brighter world, but also because in businesses and in brands we see success when brands embrace a more or stronger feminine values. So that's the thinking, and that's the background why we will focus on this. And we've been doing this webinar actually a few times for different audience in Europe, Latin America, Asia, and Indonesia in particular. And thank you so much for allowing us to once again focusing or using the angle of public policy on our webinar today. Oni has introduced us, but probably we want to show a little bit, or we want to emphasize a little bit our feminine identity. I will let Rachel and Aurelia introduce themselves using the feminine identity lens.
Thank you, Silla. So yes, so lovely to have all of you here. Thank you for coming today. And my feminine identity is the creator. I guess really because I have a very creative streak in myself. My brain waves are always going as messy as my hair. So I really love thinking of new ways and new solutions and new perspectives on things. And I'm really here today because it's really important to me. I grew up sensing that, girls were always told things like, you're too weak, or you cry too much, you're emotional, you never be like a boy. So that sense of growing up made me feel like I needed to fight all these prejudices. So coming here to talk about feminine values is very close to my heart, and I really hope that you take away some good insights today. Over to you, Aurelia.
Thank you, Rachel. My feminine identity is an explorer, and that's because I like to be constantly on the go, constantly try to meet new people, meet new places, find out new things. Why I'm here today is actually because the environment in which I grew and the system as I know it in Moldova at the time when I was born was quite rigid, was quite controlling, was quite everything that we will see today that we call as more masculine values. And with time, I actually came to see that there are other ways of doing things, ways that involve more collaboration, ways that involve vulnerability and empathy, not as a weakness, but on the opposite, as a strength. And this is also a piece of what we want to show you today, that there is a whole range of different values that can be used to bring a lot of strength and to bring a lot of success to whatever initiative we as policymakers or as business people or as someone that works in an NGO, we can bring this to life. So I pass it over to Silla.
Hi guys, so just a little bit, I mean, on the feminine identity side, I think seducer is just a name that we use to, you know, for a bit of fun, but basically I use my feminine power to probably make things happen, to allure people, you know, to come to our boat, and with the ways that are probably not necessarily classical, you know, with the new ways that are more, on one hand is feminine, but also a more, you know, it's a more collaborative, more inclusive, more inspiring. And the reason why I'm attracted or I'm passionate about this value, about this topic, is because I'm raising a teenage daughter, and then I also want her to look at the world with more balance between feminine values and masculine values. And we know that today masculine values tend to be the dominating force. So let's get into this topic as soon as we can, and we want to actually use this opportunity for not only for the three of us to show our identity, but actually for all of us in the room. I don't know, I think there are two rooms, right? There is the Zoom room, and then there is another YouTube crowd. So what you can do, we can take 5 minutes to actually use your smartphone. So you can go to powergirl.innatemotion.com. And then in that, once you go in there are actually only 4 quick questions. Yeah. So when you go in there, you will see the screen, the first screen with the login with Google or login with Facebook. But what you do is log in put in your first name, last name, and email address, and do not go on the bottom of that screen, because that is a bit confusing, because it says show result. You go, please swipe and then go to the next screen that says play with a group, and you can input SGPP as the group code. So SGPP we have written down on the slide as well as the group code. As we are talking, and then, you know, as we are going through this, we will then collect the identities that we are in this room, in this crowd, and then we will share back at the end of the webinar.
So just to recap the instructions a little bit, please key in your first name, your last name, your email address, and click on login with email. And then on the second page that comes up on your screen, which is the screenshot that we have on the right, key in SGPP under play with the group, and then click group play. And then we'll get the lovely results on what sort of feminine identities we have in the 2 rooms right now.
Okay, if there are questions we can answer even now, and I want to get used to this more interactive session, guys. So if you know, make a bit of a use of that, we can interact. So if you want to ask questions, you know, we encourage you to post, and then we have a system to get the questions and, you know, to us, and then we can answer the questions as
also
we
welcome.
go.
Right, Silla? You can also tell us, oh my gosh, this is
not
a
only questions, yeah.
Okay.
Cool. So we can take 1 more minute, I guess. And the topics for today, basically. So we will take about, you know, the whole talk will be about an hour. but then there is about 40 minutes where we are going to talk about the feminine values and what are these stronger feminine values, you know, including the examples, including people that are inspiring to us, and of course, you know, thinking already in the domain of public policy and, you know, leaders and government, and what are or who are the people that we can look and see how these feminine values are manifested. And then we can also focus after that into how do we turn the values into actions. We have 3 steps to get there. And of course, we will be very keen to, you know, listen to your feedback, input, reflection, and questions as we go. So every now and again, I will come in and encourage people to actually, you know, leave a comment, ask question, or like Rachel said, leave some compliments. That's also very much welcome. And then we go into the session towards the end, which is the Q&A, and where, you know, we can have more interaction. Those who are in Zoom can ask questions directly, verbally, as well as asking questions by typing, right? So yes, we can go to the next one. Just a bit of opening and warming up into, you know, going into this whole topic of feminine values and how these values can help us shape brighter world, especially with the angle of public policy. We understand that in the wake of the global pandemic, we need to build a better world. You know, I think there is this big crisis that come into the world, and then we all had the time or are having the time to pause, to rethink, to relook, to review everything that's happening. And we understand the old world was extremely rushing, was extremely competitive, was extremely hostile. We were adjusting ourselves. We were actually, you know, wanting to fit into that world. But today we understand that things have to change. You know, we need, as people, as different worlds, as different countries and different governments, we need to learn and we need to rebuild systems that was probably exclusive to become more inclusive. And then today we also know that we need to encourage more collaboration among us. And feminine values fundamentally are enabling people, government, companies to actually make this happen. I will over to the mic to Rachel, and then she will take you to the presentation. But please, guys, don't forget, if you have any question, any comment, any words that you want to post on the chat, on the comment, we will be happy to collect them as we go. Off to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Silla. So let me just begin by saying what times we live in right now, right? I even was telling my husband, I don't think even Hollywood could have scripted this, but this is a reality we live in. Saying that we are in a new normal, I don't even know what makes sense anymore, because yes, things are sort of normal, but then in so many parts of the world, things are not anywhere near normal. We are living in an age of disruption. These are unprecedented times. But that's why, you know, in the face of this, we strongly believe that as we are heading with tentative steps into the future, shaping tomorrow in this new normals as we go along, feminine values are really instrumental in enabling change. And the change we're talking about is change that's regenerative, change that is healing, and change that ultimately leads to growth. Feminine values has proven to bring progress to communities, achieve better livelihoods to enable people to become better leaders. And we really want to share with you today how, you know, feminine values can bring such positive impact, and the hope that as students in public policy, you can also harness this to bring your own relevance and impact to the world. So let's just start by saying, though I can't see any of you, but I can definitely sense all the thought bubbles above your heads. Many of you must be already asking, what feminine values? Does that mean there are masculine values too? Rachel, it's 2020. Isn't this kind of sexist talk in these times or in any time? are values even gendered, right? And why should they be? So I just want to say the truth is, as people, we actually intrinsically see values in a certain way. Let me bring this to life for you. A landmark study was done with 64,000 respondents across 16 countries for a book called The Athena Doctrine. It's a beautiful book. I recommend that you pick it up and read it. The man who led the study, his name is John Gerzema. He's a father of 2 daughters, and from his role at WPP as a head of research, he started to see a lot of patterns in the big data for projects that he was doing. And he had a sort of hunch, right, that there was such a thing as feminine values. But how he did it in this study was that he put together a set of 125 behavioral traits, right? And then he gave them to the 64,000 respondents and say, okay, now you classify them as feminine and masculine as you wish. And of course, they are both men and women amongst the 64,000. This is a sample of the results. So you can see on the left, these are the values that are viewed as feminine. And on the right, values that are viewed as masculine. Interesting, right? I see some of you probably nodding. And here's something else. When they were asked in the same study to rank the top 10 ideal competencies that they desired to see in a leader, the ones in yellow popped up as the top 10. You can see where the yellow words are coming more from. So I just let that rest for a while. So the point we're really trying to make is that the beauty of these values are really, wait one second. Yeah, the beauty of these values are really that they can be found in both men and women, and they're actually lived every day. And having more feminine values doesn't mean that we want to cancel out masculine values. That's not what we mean at all. We just strive for more balance. And this is because we're seeing the positive impact that it brings. And what do we mean by positive impact? You know, for evidence of this, we don't need to look any further. Oni actually even brought it up in the short chat we had before the webinar today, that just looking at the times we're in right now, countries with female leaders have suffered 1/6 as many COVID-19 deaths as those led by men. And their countries will recover sooner from recession. This already stands as an amazing fact. So if you look at the faces there, we have Taiwan's President, Tsai Ing-wen. We have New Zealand's Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, with a lovely example coming from her later. And of course, we have Angela Merkel. We have Denmark's Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, and of course, Sanna Marin, the Finnish Prime Minister, all of whom have demonstrated great empathy, foresightedness, and decisiveness during these times. And what's also interesting in the study is that it threw up this fact as well. So it's not just us at Innate that believe this, but literally 2/3 of people that were surveyed in the same study, including the majority of men, feel that the world will be a better place if men thought more like women. So this is really interesting because this view was shared regardless of age, income, or nationality. So it really seemed that universally, people were growing frustrated by a world that they saw that was dominated by codes of what they felt were masculine traditionally in terms of thinking and behavior, and really believed that feminine values could bring positive change. What we also found interesting is that if we look beyond the political world, and it's also businesses actually, when they take it upon themselves to become more relevant to the societies they serve, to using feminine traits and feminine values like empathy, they actually are able to become more successful because they end up being able to engage people more, and in the meantime, through that engagement, also drive business growth. So a great example of this is Ben and Jerry's, whose purpose is not just to be good for the belly, but be good for the soul. So this ice cream is called Pecan Resist, and it was created just to make ice cream protest against the Trump administration, to say that we do not stand for your beliefs and your behaviors and your policies, and all proceeds of this ice cream will actually go towards 4 NGOs whose work is around taking on the Trump administration's policies that they do not find fit with their own. So this is a great example of a brand that's taken on activism, but in a way that, you know, really taps into the feminine value of empathy. So as I said just now, the beauty is really that feminine values can be found in both men and women. So we really want to bring this point back on the table. I mean, we all know people in our lives, right? It could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be a colleague who actually live and embody those feminine values. This is something that we can touch and feel every day. So what we're really trying to say here is that at the end of the day, what we want to see is a more equal balance of values in our society. And this will indeed bring the positive change that we need. The thing is though, today, feminine values are still the exception and not the norm. And why is this? As even Priscilla and Aurelia said earlier on, that, you know, masculine values have, you know, still dominated through this time, whether it's in business, whether it's in politics. Why is this? Well, we really feel that at the end of the day, leaders and institutions actually need to be brave to exist and live up to people's needs. It takes courage to be able to say, yes, you know, I stand for feminine values. I stand for values that may not be the norm right now, because I feel that they will bring better impact. And this courage is something that we really, really want to see more happen in society. And I think it also starts with public policy making. So not just in business, but in public policy where so much great impact can be felt. And at the end of the day, the values that people live by define the identity that they aspire to. And when feminine values are also needed by people to heal and to get better, when policy can rally around this, you know, and really tap into these values, that's when we can all move and grow forward together. So now I would hand the mic back over to Priscilla, who would like to probe a little bit on some reflections if anybody has. Priscilla?
Hi guys. So before we move on to, you know, seeing examples how these feminine values are manifested in leaders in different places and in different countries, I would like to encourage you to actually already put, you know, some thoughts, some reflection, some observation from what has been explained before. And one interesting thing, if we remember, one of the slides is actually showing, you know, the feminine values next to the masculine values. And in the context where we are, you know, either we are in public policy, if we are studying in SGPP, for example, or we are in, you know, working in policymaker, working in companies, working in NGO, what are these, what among those values, what are the values that we think will be very important, you know, in our job, in making things happen, in helping people to progress in the work that we do. So if you, probably you don't remember, but I will let Rachel probably to show quickly the slide with the feminine and masculine values. So just have a look quickly and pick, you don't have to pick a lot of them, but pick one value that, you know, at the end you can share with us your observation. Why is this value very important? Okay, I think we can move on to Aurelia, that is going to then take us through the examples of how these feminine values are manifested.
Exactly. So first of all, we want to look at what are these stronger feminine values and what is it that we call stronger feminine values. And then we will also give you a couple of examples of current political leaders from around the globe to show both men and women, because as we said, it's everyone that can embrace these values. So to give a picture of how this actually comes to life in the sector of public policy. To start first with what are actually stronger feminine values and what do we mean by them, we have all seen that in crisis time and also in post-crisis time, feminine values are increasingly needed by people. In fact, all those systems, national systems that were very military style, that were very rigid, that were trying to control as much as possible this crisis and these health situations, have proven to be less successful than those systems that were based on encouraging people to collaborate, encouraging people to show compassion, to support each other. And this is actually what has happened, both from the side of the people, which immediately started to show lots of solidarity initiatives, but also from the side of the governments. And in fact, it's those governments, those public authorities, those organizations that build around values that people demand. Those are the ones that are representative for the people they serve. So what we are actually trying to say is that most important is to, when building whatever program policy that we want to achieve for a certain objective, the most important element is to start from identifying what is actually the need and what is the value that the people we want to serve ask for. Because that is the moment that our program or policy is going to be representative, is going to be helpful, and is going to also get lots of followers, so to say, from the part of the society. Moving on to 4 guiding principles that we put together to show what do we mean with stronger feminine values. So in fact, we have used a couple of what we call cultural decoding tools based on elements of psychology and sociology to try to look at the current situation and to identify 4 big buckets of value transition, so to say, that are highly relevant today. And what we are saying is that one of them is moving from an egocentric type of approach to an approach that is more empathetic, that is more about listening to people and being in tune with them. A second one is moving from being competitive to becoming more collaborative, joining forces, putting forces together in order to build strength for a bigger group of people. The third bucket, we call it less dominating, so moving away from an approach that is more authoritarian to one that is more enabling, to one that is more encouraging, to one that is allowing everyone to contribute and to bring a value, to create a shared bigger value. And finally, it's moving from less reactiveness, which is often the case because you are in a position for most of the time, a couple of years. So we tend naturally to think on something that is reacting to a problem now, trying to find a solution now. But in fact, what is going to bring a lasting change and what is going to make an initiative or even a leader memorable is the fact that it is meant to serve for long term. So it's basically looking a bit beyond and having this inventiveness that is meant to last for longer. We are going to go in each of these 4 buckets to bring it to life with a concrete example. And the first one we want to start with is less egocentric, more empathetic. And we begin with one of our favorite examples, which is Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand. And she, in our view, is really an embodiment of this spirit of being empathetic and listening to people. So the shift that she's actually doing, she's moving from an old normal that has the tendency to serve oneself and disregard most of those that are around us, to a new normal that is about listening, using empathy to hear the other person and to serve a bigger cause. In her words, She says, if we focus only on being seen the strongest, most powerful person in the room, then I think we lose what we're meant to be here for. We need our leaders to be able to empathize with the circumstances of others, to empathize with the next generation that we are making decisions on behalf of. So in fact, if you look up her, probably most of you also have come across articles and many of her initiatives. We have picked one that we found incredibly interesting, and it's her idea of transitioning how we think about the well-being of a country, how we assess the progress of a country, and moving from assessing the progress in a GDP, in a strictly economic manner, to measuring also the well-being of the people. If you think about it, GDP has been, or in other words, money has been used as the only thing to measure national success for a very, very long time. And it has been a progress since the World War, where the value of measuring a country's economic, or the way of measuring a country's success was the number of wars or military victories that they have won. It has progressed to this idea of GDP, and it has been indeed very helpful in rising living standards, rising wealth. But we've come quite a far way from those times, and today technology has been highly on the rise. The things have developed a lot, so measuring only goods and services alone is no longer sufficient, because it means leaving out lots of elements of great economic importance, such as unpaid household work or value of government programs like healthcare provision. These are all things that don't go into how we measure the GDP of a country. So here she comes with an initiative to introduce well-being in the way we define the progress of the country. And New Zealand, together with 2 other countries, Iceland and Scotland, have built this so-called Well-Being Economic Alliance in 2018, which has since gathered many other countries and organizations to try to start and measure these social, economic, environmental factors in a way that allow a country to move beyond GDP. So it's basically really looking at the people and understanding that even though the economy goes very well, people suffer because of depressions, people suffer because of anxiety, people suffer because of many other things, and well-being has become such an important aspect that it needs to be taken into account. So this is in a more detailed manner what we call as empathy, as looking at the people that you represent, that you serve, identifying their needs, being empathetic with them, and thinking of a solution that is going to answer to those needs. We are going to move to the second example, which is less competing, more collaborating. And here we have chosen as an example the President of the European Commission, which has recently introduced a European Green Deal. What is the European Green Deal? It's the European Union's roadmap for green transition, for becoming climate neutral by 2050. The important element is that this deal also includes a just transition mechanism, which is basically to ensure that no one is left behind. If you think about it, European Union is a union of 27 member states, meaning not all of them are on the same level in terms of how green or how carbon neutral they are at this phase. And the fact that we impose a target that is not reachable or is unrealistic for some of them, it's also unfair. This is why the just transition mechanism comes into place to make sure that forces are brought together and will support and will encourage and will allow every member state to go at their own pace in achieving this objective. So there is a collective objective, which is being climate neutral, and is something that people are screaming out loud, and there's protests all over the world. So it's basically listening to this request of the people and bringing an initiative that is collaborative in a way that allows every country to move at its own pace, and also putting funds together, support together to make sure everyone is going to achieve this target. So it's basically moving from an old normal of where there's this tendency to compete and use individual strength to win and sort of be first than the other one, towards building bridges and using the support of each other, in this case of different countries, to achieve a collective well-being. In her words, she says, we are determined to tackle climate change and turn it into an opportunity for the European Union. If we want to convince others like India or China to join, we have to be a role model. We have to be united and bold, step forward and prove that change is possible and that it is of benefit for the people and for the economy. These have been two examples, let's say, that are more globally focused. We have, for the coming two buckets, we have examples that are Asian, Singapore, Indonesia related, which is where I'm going to pass the floor to our ladies from the countries to tell you more about it.
Thank you, Aurelia. So we have used Singapore as the example to bring to life the feminine value of being less reactive and being more inventive for the long term. So rather than really focusing just on the short-term gains, but thinking more into the future, creating solutions that allow us to protect ourselves and be more future-proof in a sense. So in the old normal, there is really a tendency to focus on short-term solutions because that way you can get kind of instant gratification, right? You can get like an instant hit of like results. But really in the new normal, the potential is in acting in the present towards the vision of a better future. And to bring this to life, Singapore is a tiny country, as you know, very tiny. But at the same time, in a way, you know, it's extremely well run. And of course, we have also suffered during this pandemic in many ways, you know, with our economy shut down because of, you know, tourism was virtually zero, right? And yeah, a lot of industries got hit. But on top of setting aside, of course, what they called a COVID war chest, our Minister of Finance, Mr. Heng Swee Keat, also released a initiative called the SG United Jobs and Skills Package. Now, this was quite an interesting package because it really sought to find ways to create almost right now 100,000 opportunities for Singaporeans. And this was part of a bigger $33 billion Fortitude budget. But we really wanted to talk about this a little bit more because, of course, suddenly creating jobs, it's not easy. But this strategy involved not just of course, creating jobs, but jobs by getting government agencies to work with businesses to also create these jobs, both in the short term and in the long term. Short term would be more related to COVID, like, you know, being in the hospital and swabbing people, for instance, doing checks when entering buildings, but also more in the long term, jobs like early childhood education and healthcare. But also, other than jobs, the second pillar that they used in this package as a strategy was traineeships. So they also looked at how they could create about 25,000 traineeship positions. So this allows people to be paid while training for a job. This has also encouraged a lot of businesses in the private sector and in the public sector to take on trainees as well. Built into that is also looking at people who, what they call our mid-career, so people in your 40s or 50s. They are really sometimes also caught in between, you know, with the constant changes and evolution of technology as well, of job requirements. This also helped them to switch jobs mid-career with traineeships and really help those unemployed job seekers in that age range. Now, the third pillar, other than jobs and traineeships, was also skills. Now, sometimes, as shared earlier, you may not, maybe the industry you're working in is now been, you know, almost leveled, right, because of the pandemic. So there is really a need now to upskill, reskill, in order to cope with the future and evolving industry needs. So for under skills, they also sought to create training for about 30,000 job seekers by giving them a training allowance of $1,200 Singapore a month. And on top of that, the skills training programs that they sign up for will almost fully be offset by the government. And then lastly, the last pillar in this package was to create hiring incentives. So on top of all that, they also looked into ways to make sure and incentivize local companies to hire workers during this time. So when you see it in its totality, it's actually quite a complete package that, you know, didn't just give money out to people as a way of coping with today, but also give them a way of having that confidence to face the future, because ultimately that's what a job brings you. And a quote from Mr. Henriette is, "The current generation must have the fortitude to persevere, to adapt, and to emerge stronger, just like Singapore's founding generation. Moving forward with fortitude as we stay united as one people, remain resilient in the face of adversity, and stand in solidarity with one another." And now to bring you to the next example is Silla, who will tell us a bit more.
You know, what we were thinking when we are putting this together is, of course, nice to put, you know, an example from Indonesia, given that the audience and you guys, you know, are studying about government policy in Indonesia, but also excuse us because this is, you know, your domain, you know, where you know and understand the policy inside out. And what we can observe as citizens, actually, how Jokowi approached the whole COVID-19 handling with a very, you know, inclusive way. And it's not necessarily about dominating, you know, we are the government and this is how we want to approach solving the matter, but actually and I think that's actually his leadership style in general, that is more about, you know, enabling people and businesses and companies to prosper together. So this is why, you know, even he has special team of young people who advise him on how to be relevant to youth, and that continues also during the handling of the COVID-19. And he has been making actually this policy that is very agile, you know, using public facilities to help, to adding budget for health, of course, and social protection, and making things a lot easier, and also the speed of things. I think there are a lot of course, you know, pros and cons, criticism about how the policy could be confusing because, you know, they are probably changing very quickly. But I think the need to be agile, the need to be modifying it as we go, given that, of course, Indonesia also is not doing very well, as we know, in terms of keeping, you know, the COVID patients down, right? The number is pretty high and still actually adding up. And this is why, you know, things have to move and change quickly. But the approach to focusing on, you know, on people, on solving the problem, on immediately doing with what we have and what we can immediately, it's probably the angle here that is about enabling and not about asserting domination, to the point of our topic today. And he also in general, you know, he's famous for cutting the double-edged sword regulations, you know, those that are made into transactions or enabling or, you know, opportunity for corruptions. So any regulations that become a burden to the people should be stopped. So there's always, you know, the thinking in the government and in the policy makers to try to benefit people, but not necessarily, you know, people with interest, but benefit the common and the common people and everyone that has interest. So it's an example that we bring, you know, from all the different leaders in different countries, and this is from Indonesia. And when we can go to the next one, which is very much about, you know, summarizing. So guys, if you have again questions, I have not seen anyone posting anything so far. But if you have questions, if you have input, if you have, you know, observation, please post it, because it's very important that the last piece, Aurelia will take us through. Very important to hear your comment, very important to also understand, and even to think about how we can make this relevant for, what we do every day. Because it's, again, what we believe is with feminine values, that, and remember again, not necessarily woman or man, by harnessing feminine values, there are more leaders, more institutions that can actually help and demonstrate or enable change. Because today, change needs to happen. And we are at the tip over where this can happen. And, as young people, as policymakers, there are big opportunities to make things happen, and by embracing feminine values. Aurelia, over to you.
Thank you. So we've seen a couple of examples of political leaders that, let's say, bravely embody feminine values and make use of it in their activity domain. You can probably think also of some of your friends, loved ones, colleagues who do the same, maybe at a smaller scale. It doesn't matter, as long as it's about bringing these values to life in the context of what they do, and taking them from the background to the front line in order to make a positive difference. The question really is, how do we take this idea to action? And in order to help with that, we've put together 3 steps that are going to help harness these stronger feminine identities in whatever initiative you are currently working on. I will shortly introduce the 3 steps, and then we'll give you a couple of examples of initiatives that are going, let's say, that are following these steps one by one, to give to put a practical lens to the 3 steps that we are going to tell you about. So the step number 1 is understanding which feminine value is actually most needed by people in society. And maybe it's not by people in society in general. Maybe it is about the particular target group of people that you're working with. It can even be as small as the team that you're working with. Maybe you are working in an institution, and your scope of work is not necessarily policies that are dealing with the outside world, but it's helping the team on the internal cultural aspect. It is exactly the team. It's exactly the same, because it's your colleagues in that case that are going to have a need in terms of a specific value or something that we can help build around. So the first step is basically understanding which is the main value that we want to focus on, that is going to bring the biggest change from what you're seeing that is being needed. Step number 2 is to enable. Once you've identified what it is to try to put a set of key actions and behaviors that are going to help to bring that change to life. So it is basically creating a roadmap of small initiatives that are going to help envision the bigger change you have in mind. And the last one, step number 3, is mobilizing. So really a change idea is only successful when it is a mobilizing one, when it brings lots of people on board. Because unless you embark the others on the same platform, it's not going to fill up. It's going to most probably stay at the level of where it is. And basically mobilizing people and ecosystems is what is going to help you achieve this strong collective action. The thing is that the moment you do the first step right, which is understanding what people need, mobilizing, it's becomes much easier, because it's not something that you have invented and you're trying to onboard people with your initiative. You have already anchored it in what people need. So it makes it much easier to construct this onboarding so to say, onboarding activity. We're going to give you a couple of examples. The first one is very big. It's very, let's say, very bold, very big. And we are going to go also to smaller ones. But we wanted to start with something that is very inspiring and that is very clear in emphasizing what these 3 steps are about. And it's namely Nelson Mandela and the Rainbow Nation. So basically, what he did was to understand that compassion was what was needed most in their deeply divided societal and political context. South Africa at the time was really basically a constant internal fight between people of different races and people from different backgrounds. It was a fight because obviously everyone was trying to dominate in their own way, and he was the first person that came with a value that is compassion, and which was considered probably least intuitive at the time as something that could solve such a big divide. Eventually, he became a universal symbol of compassion and integrity because he was able to show compassion for those that put him in prison, for those that were punishing him. It was really forgiveness and compassion that helped him to move to the next step. His belief alone, of course, would not be enough unless he would be able to enable other people to join his initiative. And this is exactly what he has done. He has found sports, and in particular rugby, as a tool to encourage others to show this compassion as well. So at the time, rugby, which was considered the sport of the white men, and football of the black people, he used it to bring it, he used sports to bring everyone together. He encouraged everyone to support this Rainbow Nation. And finally, sports became a way to fight this apartheid and to bring democracy into a racially divided country. You see in the picture that he was wearing the national sports costume of the team, and he literally went down into the public to show it as a sign of understanding and of compassion towards each other. It's natural that it turned into the third picture, which is basically gathering a crowd of supporters, no matter their cultural or political context, that were encouraging the same team. And of course, it ended up by culminating in the celebration of the World Cup triumph. So this is a very vivid example in our view of how compassion, which is usually linked to a very feminine value, compassion used by a male leader to really create a nation that is united and taking it to unity from a very, very deeply divided context. The second example we want to bring you is something that is more recent, even though it started a while ago, and it's the European Union itself. When you think about it, it's 27 member states that have become so united through a system of policy and programs, and it's basically what we call a collaboration for freedom and peace. At the time, in the aftermath of the Second World War, there were 11 founding fathers that were coming from 6 currently European Union countries, and they initiated this idea of a common union. And of course, the value that they have chosen was freedom. Why? Because at the time, freedom and peace were the 2 things that were most needed in the aftermath of so many world wars and so much military action and dominance and fights between countries. So these 11 founding fathers have identified freedom and peace as 2 things that they want to go after, to bring onto the political arena. And they have initiated the idea of the EU, of the European Union. How did they enable it? Today, of course, the European Union has quite a solid map of institutions and bodies that help to have processes in place that help to keep alive all the principles of the European Union. And the institutions are, of course, tackling different domains, legislative, legal, human rights. So they have enabled this idea of freedom and peace by putting in place system of institutions and political and program frameworks to ensure this freedom. So if you think about it today, the EU is really a symbol of freedom of mobility, freedom of people, freedom of goods, services, and capital. So it's what we call the 4 freedoms. And this is the main advantage. It's basically having the luxury of being able to travel between these 27 member states, being free to move people, but to move ourselves as persons, but also to move trade and everything that concerns the economy of the countries. In terms of gathering, it's basically this aspirational system and this very clear set of processes and institutions that allowed more and more countries to want to adhere to the European Union. Whilst in the beginning it started with 6 members, there are currently 27 member states, and there are 5 more candidates that are in ongoing negotiations to become part of the European Union. So they already have embarked the process of becoming a member state in full capacity. So even 50, 60 years later, from the moment it has started, freedom is still a value that is highly appreciated. Despite the difficulties, the ups and downs, it continues to give people this idea of democracy that everyone in Europe is so much looking to hold upon to. And before I pass on to Sila, which is going to give you an example that is more connected to your realities, I really want to say that we have picked examples that are quite big and inspirational at a global level. But as I said before, it can be as small as a certain team in the organization that you're working with, because sometimes it's really the divide. You need to gather your colleagues and your people in your team to be able to move forward. Whatever it is, whether it's internally in your team, or if it's a small group of people and a specific target group that you're serving in your city or in your country, these are steps that work for whatever let's say scope or scale you're looking at. And there are certainly smaller examples like city councils in some cities in Netherlands. We have found this city council that is basically bringing people on board to take certain decisions. It's very small because it's just a tiny city in Netherlands, but the idea is the same. They can happen, these initiatives can happen at whatever level in society. So I will now let you go for the Indonesian example.
I think we are, going towards the presentation, and then what we pick on, how like a leader here in the case of Sri Mulyani, which is our financial minister, she was able to make a big change. So prior to the whole, paying tax movement that she started a few years ago, actually paying tax, even as, an idea was not very familiar to many Indonesians. But then she really was able to understand how can we provide a system that can, enable people to do this easily, but also the willingness to be transparent, to help the government, because with the tax money, there's a lot of benefit that the nation can actually have. So first of all, the understanding is to correct the system within the tax authorities themselves. So what she made is actually giving a more incentive and improving the salaries of the tax officials that actually already decrease the possibility of accepting bribes. So so she fixed the internal system of the tax authority, and from there enable people to pay tax like they are buying a mobile phone voucher. You can just actually register what you do, how much you earn, and this is the amount of income for so many number of months or years, and then this is actually the amount of tax that you have to pay, and that can be done online. So things that probably was long ago established in countries like Singapore, the Netherlands, today, in the past few years, actually was established in Indonesia, and that had a very significant impact on the number of taxpayer and how the system has been cleaned up. And of course, gather in the best way, because everything became online and the system became very simple. Actually, many parties could participate in the payment of taxes. You know, here the poster that I had is from post office, but also we know that the, you know, like the 7-Eleven, like the Alfamart and Indomart, there are so many actually mini markets or shops that you can walk in and then help you to pay taxes. So these are, you know, the example that we gather. And I think we come towards the end of, you know, this session of presentation, and then we are going to collect and gather all the questions from everyone. But before that, I had a look actually at the identity game. Not many people played, but it's very nice to see that there are magicians in the group. So we can see the name. I will not call the name, but it's just to know that, you know, in the identities, there's actually magicians. There is an innocent lover, actually, and we also have mentor. There's a person who's a mentor, and also there is a ruler. I can see there's a ruler, but do we have a slide to show all the different identities, Rachel? Because then,
no.
okay, not really.
No, unfortunately not, because I'm screen sharing. So yes.
And we also have the
share, I can do that.
Yeah.
Maybe we move on to questions first. So just
yes.
kind of,
While we are doing that, but we actually have quite a few people who played. So we have gathered answers from about 7 people, 7 people, yes. Probably it was too fast, so some people probably couldn't play the game. But we can go back again. So yes, anyone, questions? And then if you want to post the questions in Indonesian, you can do that. And those ones who are in the Zoom room, in the Zoom link, you are welcome to ask the questions live, guys. So you can, I mean, if you want to switch on your video, will be nice to see you. If not, you can write, I mean, you can just say the question without showing the video. That's also fine. But we are here for questions. And in the meantime, Aurelia had put the link to play the game on the chat. So we can also still do that. We still have 25 minutes, roughly 20-25 minutes to play that. It really takes only 2 minutes to complete. It's very simple. Any questions, guys?
Yeah, there is a question, Sila.
Yes.
I can see one of the participants raised their hands.
I'm sorry. Let me see who raised their hand.
Panelists, yeah, you can see from the panelists.
Yeah, Ishi Afiani.
Yeah.
Ishi, yes. Do you wanna come? I mean, up to you. Video can be on, can be off. Do you wanna ask question directly to us?
Yeah, I want to ask a question directly to you all.
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. So I am Isfi. I am an alumna of SGPP, and it is so nice to have you guys, to have you ladies as a female leaders and also as role models, and especially for Sila. Oh my God, I read all of your pieces on strategic review. Actually, I also read on that journal, and then, you know, I read one of your piece to become like a copy or to become like a role in making that kind of piece. So yeah, I give you my word that, oh my God, I am a big fan of you. And right now, yeah, actually this question is for all of you. And in the very beginning, in the slides about the principles for developing stronger feminine values, that it is written, there are 4 points in that. And then I tried to relate it into a feminist term, which is called female competition. So we are familiar with female competition as a discourse or as a context where women tend to compete more strictly compared to woman to man. So woman to woman, we've got like such a strict or very thick competition. So I want you, like each of you, to share your experience, especially in your own, in your own role, yeah, as an artist maybe, or in the business, or in your life, daily life. So I want to know how you deal or accommodate the negative causes of the female competition. That's number one. And then number two, you guys, you also discussed about male domination, that the position where you are now is more likely male domination. Yeah, statistically saying that female leaders are only about 30%, not more than 30% women around the world. They are in the C-level in any organization. So I want to know, how do you ladies strive in this male-dominated world as a leader? Well, actually, I wrote about breaking the female glass ceiling on strategic review. So I wrote several things with that, and I want to know about your own experience, how you break that glass ceiling. Yeah, okay, thank you. That's from me.
Thank you so much, Ishfi. Thank you so much, first of all, for the compliment. That's very kind. And then for the questions, I think they're very good questions. Number one, how do we deal with female competition? And then number two, what about the female glass ceiling that we deal almost every day? So I will start with Rachel. And then we go to Aurelia, and then I will answer the last. But let's go one by one. Like, let's do the female competition first.
Yeah, I think that's it's kind of really nice that you brought that up, because I think it's something that I had gone through quite a bit. In fact, I remember growing up, I deliberately had more male friends in school than female friends, because even at that age, being a teenager, that level of competitiveness was already there. And I think maybe I would say that in order to cope in that kind of environment, I just went out to seek the company that made me feel the way I wanted to feel. Whether it was I wanted to feel comfortable, I wanted to feel like I didn't have to be someone else. So I chose my company well. And I would say that then when I grew up more and I realized that, sometimes this is just something that you have to manage and cope with, I always took, whenever in whatever life situation, when I'm stuck, I always go back to empathy. So in a situation where, maybe it gets a little bit, competition can bring out the worst in people. But then I always look at when you turn on the empathy within oneself and put yourself in the other shoes and really think about, maybe it's not easy for the other person. Maybe that person is feeling, I don't know, threatened or feels a bit insecure. That's not a good feeling as well. Then I start to sort of see that behavior that I may not like as actually coming from a place of need, or actually that person is not out to get me, but that person might be even hurting in some way or needing some comfort in some way. So when I go through the angle of empathy, I'm able to then not see it as female competition anymore or a female competitor anymore, but just a fellow female who maybe needs to be taken aside and have a coffee with, and to really find that common ground. And that sort of brings me to the second question, which is also superb, because I worked in advertising for many years, like over 13 years, and it was always male dominated for as long as I could remember. But that's when I really learned that even though when I was young and I was sort of raised in a household that was constantly telling me that, girls are weaker and, all that stuff, when I was in that work environment, I told myself, I don't need to be a man in order to fit in a man's world. I made sure that I was who I am first, authentically who I am. I presented who I was as Rachel, but at the same time, I was unafraid to be feminine too, you know. I was unafraid to show my feminine side. I was always the first to have a shoulder ready for anyone to talk to cry on. And even guys, you know, they suffer also from a lot of stress, and men find it so hard to talk to other men about problems. But I was always the female in the room that they could go to. But at the same time, I made sure that I always kicked ass when it was required, you know? So that was a big lesson for me, that I did not need to subscribe to any notion of what was feminine or masculine. I could just be myself, and that was the most important. Yeah. Over to Scylla or Aurelia.
I'm going to add a few things.
Fantastic. Yeah, Aurelia, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm going to add a few things for the first one, because I thought the moment you posed the question, you also said at some point a very interesting phrase, which was, how do I accommodate feminine competition? And beyond, of course, what Rachel said, that there's a deeper need that you want to look to understand. There's also this idea of maybe instead of accommodating a feminine competition that we find as not helpful in the environment, we can try to find a way to show or to build a path for a different type of collaboration instead, right? So it's basically finding ways to replace that competition that doesn't help with collaboration initiatives that might bring the better out of the people, out of the collective on the table. And for the second question, I thought exactly the same as Rach did, and it's basically there's no need to, we don't have to strive in a male-dominated world by competing with men on their men capabilities. We can strive in our own way, which is basically embracing your own values and those values that you feel most comfortable with. And even though today there are not that many examples of successes, nevertheless they are. Statistics show that men are also on board. So I think it's really the moment we stop trying to be like men and have the same values as they have, and use our own powers. That's when really the shift happens and you manage to show strength from a different perspective.
Okay, thank you, Aurelia. So I think you girls have already said a lot. On female competition, I think my angle is that I can add, sometimes we are not even aware that we are not being nice to each other. I think that's one of the biggest issues. I mean, from my experience, right? We tend to just, you know, try to strive to standards that are not even true to ourselves. And then we never knew why it was put there, but we just did it. And then, you know, over the years, of course, so now dealing this, to be conscious, I think to talk about it is extremely important. Like I have also been learning and studying, you know, about the latest or the recent societal issues, right? With the, for example, with the Black Lives Matter. One of the biggest action that we need to do is to talk about it. So the more we talk about it, then more people become aware about it. I think also in the Indonesian culture, I will bring a bit of angle of Indonesian culture. We are not a culture that is very conscious about how things happen. You know, culturally things happen before us. You know, life is given on a plate and then we kind of have to, you know, live it. It's the life that we don't even, we don't own, we are not aware of, we didn't make decisions of, and then it was presented to us. So that happened in many different areas, including in the, in the competition or in the, what we want to achieve in life, in the work environment. So very much in different areas. So to be conscious is to talk about it. When we talk about it, then there will be more people who then are conscious that this is not healthy, this is a female competition, rather than competing, we can probably help each other. So, you know, helping, doing collaboration will also make us more conscious and make us more celebrating our strengths as women. And then on the second question is the female glass ceiling. Probably my answer will be quite practical. Again, you know, probably what I can add from the Indonesian angle, the female glass ceiling is again something that women are not conscious of, because women go and, you know, live their life thinking they need to be married to start with, and then they need to have children. You know, other than this, a woman is not good enough. So the glass ceiling comes from also stereotype, from also, you know, long standing cultural, quote to quote, you know, burden. It's not a burden. These are all beautiful things, that you're a wife, that you're a, you know, a mother, but we cannot, you know, put the same parameters for everyone, right? Because different women want to achieve different things, and that's fine too. And then if we start thinking, oh, because I need to, you know, prioritize being a mother, and then the rest can never happen, then actually that become our own glass ceiling. So glass ceiling also often happens from our own, you know, from our own selves. Internally, we put the glass ceilings around us because of the perception of what the societal norms are. So yeah, so be conscious about, you know, who we are, and understand what we want, and be brave. So we don't have to break rules, but we can certainly break glass ceilings. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sila, Rachel, and Aurelia. Yeah, you all guys really answer my questions. Thank you very much. So glad to hear that from you guys.
Thank you. We still have 2 questions, ladies. The second person is Veronica from YouTube, actually. And the question is from our title, Stronger ... Feminine Values. Can you elaborate more the sample of the existing public policy that has feminine values in Asia?
Well,
your example, Rachel, I think it's very, you know, it's stemming from feminine values about the Singapore, the job, and, you know, the opportunities for more people.
Yeah, I was about to say that at least from the Singapore context, even having foresightedness, or, you know, being future looking is in itself a feminine value. And I think that I think even the way Singapore has sort of coped and navigated this pandemic has really shown that. And in fact, even in the early days when, you know, it almost brings chills to my spine. I was like, in the early days, when everything was so uncertain, when you couldn't even buy face masks anywhere, or sterilizers, sanitizers, our government had actually begun to stockpile face masks, and were able very quickly to then give out 1 mask per household for all Singapore households. So having that foresightedness, and then after that also converting a lot of Singapore local manufacturing factories to just start making face masks, meant that very quickly after, we were just, you know, it no longer was something that was in short of, but we were in oversupply of. And even after that, they continued to really make sure that all the citizens were able to always stay protected. We even had something that was quite marvelous, which was a vending machine that, you know, enabled you, so you didn't have to go to a community center to pick up the face mask anymore. You could actually go 24/7 to a vending machine that is placed in all the HDB estates, so our public housing estates, very easily accessible. You scan your ID card, and then you will immediately get a face mask for each of your household. And if you have children, it's a child-sized face mask. So I just want to say that when we talk about stronger feminine values, we're really going back to our 4 principles that we shared earlier. So, you know, being less egocentric and more empathetic, it's really sort of shifting the dial, right? From being just, you know, competitive to collaborative. So being able to even have the foresight to plan for the future, that in itself is also very much a feminine value. So I would say that Singapore has definitely demonstrated that during this crisis. Yeah. Sila, any example from Indonesia?
I think because we still have one more question, actually, let's go to that. And the question is how to deal, so everyone can hear, and also those ones in YouTube, how to deal with the culture of a place or country that does not allow feminism to develop and have an impact on the environment. Aurelia, do you want to go for this one?
Yes. So I think, in all honesty, it takes courage. We've said it also before. This is, even though feminine values are demanded, unfortunately, they are not living up to its full potential at the moment. And why is that? It's because it takes courage, and that's the case for everything, that whenever there is a change or a shift that has to be made, there has to be someone that is a strong believer in this and has the courage to act for this. So maybe it's not the most, let's say, easy answer that you are hoping for, but I really think it's about picking a small fight that you want to be busy with, because this is a very big thing, but just focusing on something that can be as small as bring more collaboration in your personal working environment, or focus more on long-term inventiveness in a certain program or framework that you're working on. It can be a very well-defined initiative, and simply by focusing on it, it's already a symbol and a sign of courage to drive change, and you will get people on board eventually. And I think also an important thing is the question sounds like how to deal with the culture of a place or a country that does not allow feminism to develop. I think it's also probably the focus. The moment you shift from focusing on developing feminism to helping the people you want to help, it's going to bring a completely different mindset, because you're no longer fighting a feminist cause. You're trying to bring a benefit to a certain group of people. And remember, there are also men that will be very likely to adopt certain feminine values. So basically, my point is, the moment you have the cause and you are focusing your energies on the cause, I'm pretty sure you can onboard even men that are going to share the same values with you. The end result is going to be the same, but the way you're tackling it is slightly different, because you're shifting away from promoting an ideology of feminism to bringing results towards whatever initiative or cause you're working on.
Yeah, thank you. I think actually that's very important to not, because then we go to the next question, to not, focus on gender, right? I think we need to start focusing on people and the benefit that we can bring to communities and society. So despite, whether it's feminist or not feminist, because then the next question, guys, is what does it mean to identify as a feminist? I'm not sure if Iham actually saying that we are feminists, but what does it mean to identify as a feminist? I think we can, we still have 3 minutes, so we can probably answer this quickly. If you probably start, Rachel, and then we have a round to answer this, and probably we can close. And Oni, you're around, right?
Yes, I'm around.
Cool. Is that okay? We do it like this?
Yes.
So the last 3,
yes,
we answer, and then we close.
please
Okay.
go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'll be the first to put my hand up and say, yeah, I do identify as being a feminist, and I think it should take on different definitions for different people. So for me, it's really standing for women's rights, and at the end of the day, we still have a way to go. There is still an imbalance that we see in all of society, whether it's the gender pay gap, or there's so many elements in society that we still need to act on. But the beautiful thing is, even my husband will identify as a male feminist, because he also stands by me. And I don't think that it needs to have the label as before, because before it was very polarizing, but today, honestly, it's something that should be inclusive. And that's why today our talk was really around feminine values. We wanted to really make sure that and put on the table that feminine values is something that even men can have and should have. And all of us have both masculine and feminine values in each one of us. And creating that balance and, you know, putting that balance back into society, it's really what's going to help us to grow. Yeah, over to you, Aurelia.
I fully subscribe to your opinion, so I share it to 100%.
Priscilla?
Yeah, I think so I was just looking up, you know, because the question is quite the definition, right? So a feminist is someone who supports equal rights for women. Do I support equal rights for women? Yes, of course I do. But then I do not want to focus on the gender, because I have never been focusing on gender. I've always been focusing on people and what we can bring, right? I mean, everyone has something that they can bring, and doesn't matter what the gender is. So yes, but equal rights for women, for sure, would like to have that, and more, especially in Indonesia. I think this topic is often a bit sensitive. We don't want to talk about it because we don't know how to deal with it. So the more we discuss it, the more we, you know, also I think in the audience, we have a lot of, you know, future policymakers. Probably you are going to sit in government, and then, you know, to embrace feminine values, to bring more equal rights to any parties in the world that you are serving, in the community that you're serving, will be very important. So thank you, and I'll give it to Oni. Oni, would you like to close it?
Thank you very much, Sila, Rachel, and Aurelia. So it has been nice, you know, like to having you in our webinar, and hopefully we can work together in the future. And that's the last of our webinar today. And those who join our webinar, SGPP always have webinar. Check our website, our Instagram at SGPP Indonesia for our next coming webinar. Once again, thank you very much, and stay safe, everybody, and keep healthy, and hopefully that the pandemic will be over soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Bye, guys. Thank you.